So she made the same mistake as you and got the wrong bedroom? This seemed like a fun way to live. Rohan seemed quietly happy about it too. Yes, she was in my bed, and I was in the bed I'm loaning to her. So awkward. She made the mistake first, but that's no excuse for jumping into hers. At least I wasn't snoring next to her. At any rate, the light woke me up. It was on the wrong side of the sky, and hit my eyes the wrong way. I jumped up, went to my room, knocked on the door. She woke up. I explained the situation through the door, and then moved away so she could get back to her own room. Since she had to cross the workroom to get there, I went into the North Sunroom. That's when I found Tsukumajuku's body. From romantic comedy hijinks to grisly murder. I suppose the simplistic layout and lack of furniture make such accidents possible, Rohan continued. I wasn't drunk, and I'm such a light sleeper the difference in the morning light was enough to wake me. So I don't see how it's possible I could have slept through someone carrying a stuffed polar bear into the house. There's no need to think about that anymore, I said. Huh? Rohan blinked at me. This room mix-up was bothering me. Why would that happen, to both at once? This meant something, but I didn't know what yet. So why is there a polar bear here? This, I knew. The stuffed polar bear was not brought into the house at the same time as Tsukumajuku's body. It was already in the house, probably in this very room. What? Here? This gigantic stuffed animal? Rohan raved at it. It was 2.5 meters long. If it had been standing, it would easily have topped 3. Since when? Have you gone on any trips since you moved into the house? No, not because my work schedule keeps me here. I simply had no place I needed to research. I didn't care. So you were working at home every day, which means it would be quite difficult to guess when you go out. Odds are this polar bear's been here since you moved in. Since I bought the place. Yeah. Then how do you explain me living here without ever seeing it? Do you take me for a blind man? Rohan, it's almost evening. Before the sun goes down, let's try an experiment. Yes, let's. But first let me ask. Do you want this stuffed animal? Not at all. I ask because you are technically the owner. Now where's your washroom? What? Why? I need to borrow your hair clippers. The top of Rohan's head was nicely styled, but he wore a strange jagged hairband, and the hair beneath that was neatly trimmed. This didn't seem like a hairstyle you'd ask for at a hair salon, so I was sure he maintained it himself. I was right. He took me to a washroom and handed over a pair of clippers. I also borrowed a broom, dustpan and towel. I'll have you know I'm not a fan of loaning such things to other people. Like I said, I'm very high-strung. I'm not using them personally, I said. We went back to the sunroom, and I began cutting the polar bear's hair, removing the bits covered in brown paint. Ah! Now I can never use those clippers again. I hope you'll be paying me for those. I'll send you a bill. Seriously. I brushed Rohan aside. Please, you're being distracting. Why don't you go call Sugimoto? I'd like to meet her, hear her side of things. Wait in your workroom till I call you. You're not going to be rude to her, are you? I won't stand for it, he muttered, and left. I concentrated on shaving the bear. Eventually it looked like a polar bear again. Good. I swept the hair into the dustpan, but there wasn't even a trash can in the room, so just had to leave it in the corner. I wiped the floor with a towel. I went to wash the towel off, and on my way to the washroom I found Rohan peeping in the door from the workroom. Just a few more minutes. Ah, you even wiped up the blood. Don't look at me when they yell at you for destroying the scene. Yeah, don't worry about that. With the blood gone, the sunroom floor was bright white again. Good. I put the towel down by the dustpan and left the sunroom to get Rohan. He was alone in the dark workroom. Was Sugimoto out? No matter. The experiment's ready. Come on in. Rohan was seated on the corner of his desk, and he jumped up and trotted over. So, we're experimenting with my supposed blindness? Yes. Did you hide the polar bear somewhere? No, I'm just checking to see how blind you are. What did... He started, but as the door swung open, his words trailed off. Huh? The bear. It's here. I thought so. He couldn't see it. The bear had its back to Rohan. I explained. Polar bears have evolved to enable them to hunt in snow. Their hairs are hollow. The hollow serves to scatter the bright northern light, making their entire bodies glow white and preventing their prey from seeing them approach. Their bodies cast no shadow. This also allows the light to reach their bodies directly and warm them. Rohan, right now you're a seal in the snowfield being stalked by this bear. In this right room, with sunlight streaming through these massive windows, and the white gravel and white sand beach outside the room, the polar bear's hair scattered the light just enough to trick your eyes as you enter from that dark workroom. No, 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 no! Rohan reacted to my deduction injection with such a bizarre noise I had to burst out laughing. But this was no time for laughter. This wasn't a trick the killer had intentionally prepared. You were so busy working since you moved in you put nothing in this north sunroom, and almost never came in here. And even if you did, you were blinded by the sunlight and never saw the bear. But it was always here, and it's in a glass room, so at other times of day or other angles, anyone doing anything but peeking through the door after working in a dark room would have seen the polar bear. The girl you lived with never imagined you hadn't seen it, and never thought to bring it up in conversation, but she knew it was there. Tsukumajuku's killer saw it too. That's why it occurred to him to use it in his Kintaro display. You see, that was the start, Rohan. That's what gave him the idea. But this is the third murder. He simply chose to use it later in his spree. But because he had the bear, he knew he could pull off Kintaro. Because he could do Kintaro, he decided to do Urashima and Momotaro. Based on the difficulty of each display, that must be how he arrived at the plan. Now Rohan, Kintaro, Urashima and Momotaro. The three famous taros, all famous folk tales. Will there be more murders? There's plenty of other folk tales, so I picked 3 with characters named Taro. I've no idea. There must be a meaning, but the 3 famous ones are already used. Do you know of any other folk tales with taros? GGG. But that's not a folk tale, and the anime song isn't a children's song. Then Obake Q is out of the running as well. Indeed. I can't think of anything else. Neither can I. Perhaps there are local legends about something taros here and there across Japan, and songs about them, but this type of display holds no meaning if the people viewing the display don't get it. Occasionally you'll get a killer doing it for the art or something, but in that case these 3 are too simplistic. If there were a 4th murder, the display would have to be based on a legend so much less famous it wouldn't fit. I think we can probably assume this serial detective killing has ended at 3. If I was the killer, I would have revealed an original Taro for the 4th murder, Rohan said. Mere distractions. I ignored him and reviewed my theories. 3 cases. 3 points. That made a triangle. Rohan, can you show me the exact locations of the other cases? I took out the map I'd procured at the station, and Rohan confidently pointed them out. I wasn't sure how Rohan had come by this information, but he had it. Rohan had some power I didn't yet understand, but I could deal with that later. I marked the locations where Hakuyuku, Nano Neko, and Tsukumajuku were found, and drew a triangle. Then I took out the hand-drawn map of the world Tsukumajuku had made. The world fitted with oceans, pieces of Panlandia scattered across it. I compared it with the Bermuda Triangle he'd described. I was right. The triangle of dead detectives matched the shape of the Bermuda Triangle exactly. Tsukumajuku travelled here through time via this triangle. What could that symbol mean here? What is that strange map? Rohan asked. It's a map of the world, isn't it? I see Japan, in the strangest place. The whole world's been scrambled. This is a map Tsukumajuku drew for me before he died. It looked like you were comparing the triangle drawn on that map with the triangle drawn by these 3 murders. Do you think there's some connection to that map? Not everything has meaning. Moments of synchronicity seem so bizarre our minds naturally attempt to extract meaning from them. Meaning that isn't there. I met Rohan's eye. I disagree. There's an important inflexible law that defines the world. Everything has meaning. Nothing's out of place. That's only true in mystery novels. But I'm a detective. The moment I get involved, the rules of the world shift to my genre. Such confidence. Or possibly madness. So this is a mystery novel then? Then let me say this. If I'm involved as well, if this is happening here in Morioh, no one set of rules can define anything. The very laws of physics are distorted beyond recognition here. In Morioh? What did that mean? Rohan was clearly hinting at the power he seemed to have. Was there something specific to Morioh that caused it? Or were there other people with powers like this here? Rohan, you have a power of some kind, right? Mr. Joestar, you realise Arrow Cross and the room in which Tsukumajuku was found technically form a locked room? Rohan asked, ignoring my question. Eh? What's that got? What point was there to the room being locked? The state of Tsukumajuku's murder made it perfectly clear he'd been murdered. The body was carefully posed, and it was the third case. In no way would it be mistaken for suicide. Being a locked room means nothing here, Rohan said, so he hadn't ignored my question. Because the laws of physics don't apply? Exactly. There's a fair number of people in this town who could kill Tsukumajuku from a distance and create the locked room. Could you do that? Yes, I could have Tsukumajuku himself lock the room, paint the bear right, strip, wrap that triangle around himself, climb on the bear and cut his own head off with an axe. Of course I would do no such thing. You could make people do things? Like hypnotism? Very similar, but much less ceremony, and much harder to resist. So, I hesitated, then decided to say it. This is a superpower? Is this a town full of people with superpowers? We call these powers stands. The main difference from typical comic book superpowers is that each stand has a visible form. It may look like a person, an animal, an insect, a boat or a car, a fishing rod or a key. But because these images appear to stand beside their users, we call them stands. And stand masters find themselves drawn to one another, like a magnetic attraction. Morioh is just one such pole. I shuddered, at a loss for words. Superpowers. I had to solve a case in a world where they existed. It was too late to back out now. I was already part of this. Everything I'd known went flying out the window when Tsukumajuku appeared. Everything had meaning. Nothing's out of place. I repeated my own proclamation like a mantra. I had to make my deductions with this new information in mind, and if I was truly a detective, I'd be able to pull that off. Speaking of strange laws of physics, Rohan said. I knew I didn't want to hear this, but I had to. I needed to know everything. What? This morning, when I woke up in the rest sunroom after accidentally sleeping there, I looked at the north sunroom. Those big windows are perfectly parallel, and the doors at the back of the arrows are also made of glass, so I had a good view of the inside of the north sunroom. The polar bear is quite tall, and if Tsukumajuku's body had been on its back, I would certainly have seen it. I couldn't see it at all, Mr. Joestar. Rohan seemed to pity me. When I woke up, the polar bear and Tsukumajuku's body were not in the sunroom. The sun had not yet risen, and the sky behind the north sunroom was a dull orange. The polar bear's hairs would not have had enough light to reflect to make it invisible. I'm certain of it. There was no Kintaro display in that sunroom when I woke. I'm afraid your theory the polar bear was always in the room doesn't hold water. After my coincidental glance at the north sunroom, I got out of bed, crossed to the east sunroom, spoke a word or two to Sugimoto, went to the north sunroom, and found the Kintaro display. In other words, during the couple of minutes, no, 1 minute that I was inside, the killer would have had to murder Tsukumajuku, move the bear in, arrange the display, and escape from the locked room, all without being seen by me on my way to the sunroom, and without stepping on any of the gravel that surrounds the house. I think it's clear this was not the doing of any normal human, no matter how crafty. Certainly seems that way. I don't mean to frighten you, but 3 other detectives have already been murdered. You should consider your own safety. You appear to be a skilled detective, but I doubt there's anything someone without a stand could do here. Was that true? If everything has meaning, then my coming here means something, Rohan, I said. I have a role to play here, that much is certain. Rohan, could you tell me more about these stands? People like us never share the details of our powers with others. But for some reason, I find myself drawn to you. Don't misunderstand me. I'm speaking of the magnetism I mentioned earlier. For some reason, I find myself convinced our meeting isn't a coincidence. Naturally, I said. I was more or less summoned here. Invited, by means of a threat. Rohan, Do you know... Huh? What? I couldn't finish the sentence. I know the name a moment ago, but now it wouldn't come out. I wanted to ask if you knew the name. What? Sorry, I was going to ask if you knew a name, but suddenly I can't remember it. I was a detective. This never happened. It can never happen. Had I simply forgotten? No, that couldn't be. My memory never failed me. Rohan was staring at me in silence. Did you do something to me? He nodded. Yes. If you say that name aloud, you'll die. What? Was Rohan threatening me? What had Rohan done to me? Stolen my memories? No. Rohan had also forced me to call him just Rohan. His power was similar to hypnotism. So he was controlling me, making me forget that name. What kind of power would make that possible? Then you do know that name, Rohan. I know the name, not his face. Can you tell me? No. Speaking his name means death. You explode. Explode? What do you mean? Your body's blown away. Fire and shockwaves. Everything turns to ash, down to your hair and fingernails until there's no trace of you left. You're killed by a bomb of something? What kind of bomb could demolish the body that thoroughly? Your entire body's the bomb. What do you... Before I could finish, the doorbell rang. It made a noise like a phony violin, and took me several seconds to work out it was a doorbell at all. Oh, they're back, Rohan said. His eyes went dead. What was wrong with him? I wondered. Sorry. Could you get them to leave? I know them well enough, but lately they've been ignoring me. Very vexing. Ignoring him? You should really handle that yourself. I wasn't here to mediate childish squabbles. Come on, you're a detective. Running off people who interfere with the investigation's part of your job description. They'll definitely get in the way. I promise. How do you know them? I asked, looking. 3 boys in school uniforms. They looked to be about my age. They were walking around the house, moving towards us. 2 of them looked like thugs. I could see why I'd want to avoid them. They're kids. You sure they aren't your fans? They aren't fans. Just a pain in my ass. Every time they show up, they bring trouble with them. I'm going back to my workroom. You get rid of them. Rohan turned and basically fled the north sunroom. But as he opened the door, he paused and said, You too, Sugimoto. I turned to look, but only Rohan went through that door. My head was swimming. Stands, a murder display in a locked room made in 1 minute, a name hidden from my memory, Rohan's odd behaviour. This strange building, the strange events inside, the Arrow Cross house and the Cube house. There was even a girl with amnesia. Rohan was a little weird about her. He'd been speaking to empty air, as if there was a girl standing there. I opened the door and stepped outside. I had to get the facts. When the 3 boys saw me coming out of the Arrow Cross, they moved into an attack pattern, placing themselves on all 3 sides. The 2 thugs had the same face, and they were probably twins. One went to my right, the other to the left. The boy in front of me looked like a nice kid. He didn't look like the sort who'd be friends with the other 2. He raved, smiling. Hello! I bowed. Good afternoon. There was a murder here today, but we saw you in the window and came to check it out, he said. He was smiling, but also watching me carefully. Let me introduce myself, I said. My name's Jorge Joestar. I may be only 16, but I'm a detective. 16? So are we. A detective? But you shouldn't be in a place like this alone. After all, the one murdered here was a detective too. Yes, I knew him. Oh, I see. My condolences. So you came to investigate? Exactly. You are friends of the owner, Rohan Sensei. And he told me to run you off. I see. Well, sorry if I spooked you, but Rohan gave me permission to be here. So... Rohan did what? The thug on my right snarled. Don't you fucking lie to me! Interestingly, he made no attempt to get in my face, the way most thugs would. He had his hands in his pockets, and was standing a good 3 meters away. His body language made it clear he was ready to pounce, and I was suitably intimidated. His twins kept the same distance, and was watching me quietly. This was clearly their natural fighting distance, out of my reach, but they could reach me. They had powers, stands, that had forms of their own. So, I said, you've got your stands out then? The boy on my right snapped. You could fucking see them, he roared. Something grabbed me by the throat. He didn't move at all. Something else had its hand round my neck and was lifting me into the air. An invisible hand. I could feel the palm and 5 fingers. It was shaped like a human, but it wasn't human. Rohan said some stands were humanoid. This was clearly one of them. I tried to grab the hand, but my fingers passed right through it, catching only empty air. When he saw that, the thug looked surprised. You can't... What? You want to stand, master? What the hell are you doing here? What do you know about Rohan? His stand slammed me up against the arrow cross window. What? I managed. Where's Rohan? Don't you even think about lying. Where? He's here, I said, betraying Rohan's trust immediately. I didn't have much choice. My vision was quickly blurring. I was about to pass out. Here? What are you talking about? No one's seen him for 2 weeks. Don't you fuck with me. He was missing. Lately they've been ignoring me, he said. But they called him Sensei and were clearly searching desperately for him. That's why I was dangling in the air like this. This didn't add up. How could they perceive the situation so differently? The other thug turned towards the house and yelled, Rohan Sensei! The smiling one was watching me closely, saying nothing. The flow of blood cut off. My brain was gasping for oxygen, but I forced it to think. Rohan Sensei! Thug B yelled again. Rot, Rohan said. Honestly, you're the worst, I heard him mutter. But Thug B asked, Remy, has Rohan come back? Like Rohan said, were they ignoring him? This ain't right, Thug B said. This murder today. I'm sure it was him. It's not safe for you to be here alone, Remy. I started sliding higher up the glass. Eh? But he's suspicious, Remy, Thug A said. Eh? Why did he say eh? Like he was responding to something Remy said, but I hadn't heard her voice. Couldn't see her at all. I tried to turn my head and get a better look. See, Mr. Joestar? Rohan sighed. They're the worst. Thug A spoke over him. None of us know what he looks like. He turned to look at me. You could be pretending you're a detective. But you're really Kira Yoshikage. Oh, I thought. The invisible hand round my throat vanished, and I fell to the ground, almost laughing. I remembered. That was the name. How had I forgotten it? Wait, what was it again? The gravel crunched under my knees, and I coughed violently. Thug B ran over to me. Fukushigi. Where are you, Fukushigi? That's a weird thing to say, I thought. Then he grabbed me by the shirt and dragged me to my feet. So you are a stand master, he yelled. I had no idea what he meant until I looked around. Thug A was gone. What the hell did you do to Fukushigi? Bring him back right now, or I'll retire you on the spot. You've got 3 seconds. 1? Apparently Fukushigi was Thug A's name, the one who'd been strangling me. And his sudden disappearance had made Thug B jump to the conclusion I'd attacked him. He seemed frightened. Wait, I have no idea what... I saw Rohan standing next to him. Rohan, you saw it. Say something. Thug B saw me looking over his shoulder and turned to look. He sprung back quickly, angrily. What are you talking about? You're mixed up in his disappearance, aren't you? What? What the hell? Jesus, Rohan said. Your brother vanishes and you're still keeping this practical joke going? What an asshole. No, he wasn't ignoring Rohan. Thug B couldn't see him. He's in on it! Koji! Rate me! Get back! Where's Fukushigi? Tell me right now! 2! Thug B screamed. The other boy stepped back, keeping a close eye on me the whole while. I looked around. They kept talking to Sugimoto Remi, but there was no sign of her. But she was here. I just couldn't see her. I will fuck you up! I understood now. Time's up! Get ready for a beating! That's what I'm best at!